This is the story of a family unknowingly drawn into a nightmare. In a small town called Southington, a family moved into their new home in the 1980s, unaware that the house had a dark and terrifying history, one that would tear at the fabric of their reality. Doors slammed, lights flickered, and shadows moved on their own. But what haunted the house wasn't just the spirits of the dead. It was something far darker, far older, something that seemed to feed on fear. Join us as we unravel the chilling mystery behind one of the most famous hauntings in American history, the haunting in Connecticut. So what was it? A spirit? A demonic presence? A hoax? In this episode, we'll explore the eerie events, the witnesses, the skeptics, and the unexplainable. And we'll ask the question that still lingers in the cold night air. What truly happened in that house?
Welcome to Crypt Walkers, the podcast where the eerie and enigmatic come to life. Hosted by a police officer, Ryder,
But there was definitely something
in that house.
and his co-host, William,
Legitimacy first is more important.
director of WTCW Paranormal.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another case episode of Crypt Walkers. My name is Ryder, and this is...
William with WTCW Paranormal.
Thank you for joining us as we open the crypt and take a walk into the shadows of the unexplained. If you are new here, whether you're a skeptic or a true believer, prepare to open the gates and uncover stories of ghosts, cryptids, haunted places, and the mysteries that defy all logic. Check us out on Instagram. You can actually view images and extras associated with this particular case. We post additional media typically, we should, right at the time that the case premieres. So if you are interested, check us out at Instagram at Cryptwalkers. That's all one word, lowercase, at Cryptwalkers. So,
And you know what? The DMs are open, brother. You want to tell us your paranormal story? Hit our line. We have like 20 followers at this point. So look, man, we're almost a 100% chance of responding to you.
absolutely.
And if you're familiar with the series, we do listener files. So if you want to submit your story for an episode, hit us up at Cryptwalkers on Instagram.
Absolutely. And if you also want to submit your listener files to like our email, that's contact@cryptwalkers.net.
Yeah.
So
if you
everything
wanna,
we're talking about will be in the show notes.
yeah, if you want to go old school with it, you can do Gmail too. Whatever. No shame.
Oh man, shots fired. Shots fired.
No,
Man,
no,
ow.
no.
In other words, guys, he's calling me old.
Never.
Without further ado, I'll go ahead and just dive right into it. So I'm going to butcher this name like multiple times. At this point, I have said it 3 different ways off mic. And I believe it's Snedeker, right? Is it Snedeker?
Yeah, it's Snedeker. It's Snedeker.
Snedeker. Okay. It sounds like a very Dutch name to me, but anyway, the Snedeker family consists, for our story, of Alan Snedeker, his wife Carmen, and their 4 children, Philip, Michael, Alan Jr., and Stephanie, as well as later on Carmen's nieces, Kelly, who is 17, and Mary, who is 12. The thing about this family, though, is I have heard multiple different names. Like, the names kind of change. For example, Michael has also been known as Bradley. So I don't know if that's just they're changing the names of the kids because of the events that happened, or...
Yeah. My personal headcanon was that maybe initially they approached the story using their real name, and then later on they took up an alias. Either or, like, it could be inversely where they had a alias initially. I think there was an alias at some point, either that or not to get into any spoilers, but some inconsistencies in the story. But we'll get there.
Yeah, no, trust me, we'll definitely get to that part. But So anyway, back to the history of the family a little bit. So Alan was a former stonemason who allegedly was thought to have been struggling with alcoholism during this whole story. Uh, like I said, we'll get into further details on that. And Carmen, she worked as a waitress, and basically she was a stay-at-home mom, but she was also trying to like this family was going through some financial hardships, and so she did everything she could to help out financially. But Alan was basically the breadwinner
You know,
during this whole
I
thing.
wonder if, the financial struggle had anything to do with her going to every local news source and telling her that her house was haunted. I wonder.
Okay, 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 okay. Hold up. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. All right. But we're gonna start from the family and the house and the
Yeah.
story and everything else. So
Innocent until proven guilty. All right, I'll leave him
innocent,
alone.
yes. For this, we'll say innocent until proven guilty. We're gonna at least halfway through this, we're gonna take our blinders and kind of put them on for a little bit and just ride the wave. So uh their eldest son, Philip, he was 14 at the time of the story, was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer that affects the body's lymphatic system and typically affects children and young adults. Now, that's actually, that's kind of heartbreaking. No kid should ever have to go through cancer, in my opinion. So, at the time, he was getting treatment at the University of Connecticut Hospital, which was like one of the big cancer centers for his area. Now, this is the 80s, by the way. So, uh, this is this resulted in where the family lived at the time. They had to travel every day, 2.5 hours to the hospital for his treatment, and then 2.5 hours back. So that's a total of 5 hours in a car and being sick at the same time every single day. Obviously, something had to give, right? So they started looking around to figure out if maybe there was uh, a better place to live that was closer to the hospital. Okay. In doing so, Carmen was kind of like the head of the family in a way. The Alan was busy trying to work and trying to take care of the family financially, but Carmen was the one that was actually out trying to look for housing and everything. So she came across a beautiful home in Southington, Connecticut. It was very close to the hospital, and there was also a company that Alan could transfer to that was in that area. It would take time, but it seemed like things were kind of lining up. You know what I mean? So the house that she found is 208 Meridian. It's located on 208 Meridian Avenue. It's a four-level home with three levels of living space and a basement. So the Snedeker family would only have access to the main level and the basement because the house was a converted house into a duplex type situation. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, it was a duplex at one point, but when the Schnedekers
Yeah.
moved in, they bought it as one whole unit. It was not split with another family, I don't
No.
believe.
No, it was.
Oh, it was.
There were neighbors that they had living upstairs. Dun dun
Because
dun.
I've heard that they were the only people living in the house. Oh,
Nope, there was,
scandal.
and we'll definitely get into that. But okay, back to this though. So they moved into this house, and this is the story of Carmen basically finding the house. So she shows up, she sees a for rent sign. She immediately approaches the house, goes inside. At the time, there's actually just people working in the house. They were doing a remodel, and she was only able to see part of the house. But from what she had seen, she's like, this is perfect for our family. The rent is very low. I can afford this, and we have enough space for all the kids. So she tried to talk with the owner, couldn't get a hold of the owner at that time. Came back the next day, spoke with the owner, and the owner was fairly. I don't know how to put this. The owner was very like salesman almost, like obviously like, yeah, yeah, no, this will be great for your kids. Well, great for you and this and this and this and this. And then when she started bringing up the fact that they were children, she kind of the owner kind of started distancing a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how to describe it. Like it went from I'm gonna try to sell you this place as far as like I really want you to rent this place to suddenly like ooh, uh, I don't know. It was just I don't know. I don't know if that has anything to do with paranormal or just it
Well,
implies that the landlord knew more about the house than what was told to her.
either that or the landlord just hates children. I mean, that's there.
Yeah, I guess. So anyway, back to the story. So she decides, hey, there's really no other options that we have right now. Essentially, we have to rush into this because these trips are killing us. Uh, my husband, he can transfer, but he can only transfer like things lining up. You know what I mean? So sometimes you can't transfer all the time. That job may become filled, and then there's no reason to transfer. You know what I mean? Like it can
Right.
become an issue. So essentially, they're pressed for time, and she goes ahead and basically signs off on it. And the lease was signed on June 30th, 1986. So we have that because of the records.
Right.
Uh,
So, hold on. Let's do a rain check. So here we are. We're at about the midpoint of the story, right? So we've built into the point where they're now moving in.
mhm,
Son gets cancer.
mhm.
The nearest cancer research center is, super far away. So the
Yep,
family decides to move closer. And very conveniently, there's this house, for rent. They move in, lease is signed.
exactly. So, and they had a large amount of access to. They were the ones that had the biggest part of the house. They had the whole main level, and they had the basement. So the basement was actually separated in two. It was somewhat furnished, I guess you could say, a finished basement, and it was separated by French doors. So if you know what French doors are, they're basically these very fancy doors that have like window panes in them. I'm sure you've seen French doors, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
They have that kind of grid like pan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it's weird to have that in the basement, but anyway. Uh
Yeah,
so Carmen,
that's more of like a dining room type.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Carmen, the mom, so she tells the family, "Hey, guess what? We found this house. It's so beautiful, blah 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 blah. You're going to love it." And she ends up like she takes Philip into the house, basically to show him the house. And I think other kids were there as well, but the stories mostly focus on the interaction between Philip and her. And Philip, who is, for the most part, a happy go lucky kid, he's just, of course, battling cancer, which is probably the worst thing he's ever faced in his life up to that point. Um, Immediately turns to his mom and says, "Mom, this place is evil. We got to get out of here. Or we can't stay here." And she goes, "Okay, look, I get it. You don't want to move from your home, blah, 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 blah." She chalks it off as a kid that, when kids move, especially if they've been living in a place the whole time, and you end up moving cities or whatever, it's not something that you're really looking forward to doing. So she chalked it off as that. But he naturally had this vibe about the house. And Carmen herself, in later interviews, admits to just before moving into the house, she had a nightmare. She had a nightmare that she was walking in the house and there was these just coffins like next to each other down the hallway, you know, um, and they had nude bodies in them that were like very very pale, clearly dead bodies, and she just got this overwhelming sensation that she uh, was learning something about the house. So when she woke up, she turned to Alan and was like, "Oh my God, it's a funeral home. We're moving into a funeral home." And
And
he's like, "A house is a house."
yeah. Well,
I'm guessing.
this whole bit is going to be really funny in retrospect when we get into the debunking part of this. So
Hmm.
you listeners at home, you need to stick through to
Just
the end of this episode because
like I said, hang on to your seatbelts,
look,
kids, because
look,
this is
y'all need to listen to the end of this episode because once we get into debunking, this whole testimony is going to be so funny in
yes.
retrospect.
So, so she's terrified, and Alan basically talks to her, and they go back and forth, and it becomes this thing of, okay, well, I mean, at the end of the day, what can you really handle about it? What can you really do about this type of situation?
Right,
It's not a
yeah.
funeral home anymore, and we need a place to live, and so we'll make it work. We just won't tell the kids.
Right. And plus there's no action to act upon. It's like, yeah, you had a dream there was coffins. What am I gonna do? Like we
Yeah.
already signed the lease.
So when they go into the basement, so this is while they're moving in and stuff, they go into the basement and they find like surgical equipment, like embalming equipment. They even found like toe tags that had been actually written on, had names of the deceased.
Right.
Um, so they even had what's called a body lift. It's like this, I've only ever seen one once. And it's basically like a shelf that you can crank and it raises and lowers. Uh, this one apparently was very old and it kind of had a like a steampunk creep vibe to it.
You know it's
And
crazy.
so,
The kids
hmm,
were probably playing on that. No BS. They were probably playing on that without knowing.
well, not yet. The kids aren't there yet. No one's really moved into the house yet. They start, the Carmen immediately starts trying to remove as much as she can to show remove as much as she can that shows that this is a funeral home. The only thing that she wasn't able to remove was that lift because it was just too big. So she kind of just stuck it in the corner and made it look like it was a decoration. Um, she tried to talk to the landlord about it. Apparently, the landlord kind of had problems with her getting rid of all this stuff because she was like, it was a historical funeral home, so some of those artifacts may have had some value. But she was like, my fucking kids are gonna live here. No, you know. So I have to kind of admire her for that. She was trying to do her best to not let the kids know that um, it's a funeral home.
Can you admire her for that though? Because
Well, okay. Remember, we're telling the story as if we don't know stuff
apologies.
down the road. So I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. She was trying to be a mom of like, look, I'm in a very stressful situation. Um, we rushed into this because we had to. And she at this point didn't believe in anything paranormal about it. She just had like a nightmare. Anybody can chalk off a nightmare. Um, and she just felt that maybe she was slightly freaked out because of the fact that, you know, dead people.
Right,
Um,
yeah. I mean even
but it's
if
not
you
there now. It's not there now. So she's like, I can go ahead and I can make this a home. So they do they do one thing that I don't understand. I really don't get this. So because Philip is the oldest, and the next brother down is Michael, uh, the second oldest, naturally they need their own space, right? Uh, so they get put together in the basement.
what?
You're gonna put your kid that has cancer in a dingy New England basement. Make that make sense to me. Take all the paranormal out of it. If I had a kid that had cancer, I would probably put him in the warmest part of the house. You know what I mean? Like no fear of any sort of like weird
Wouldn't that be a contradiction
mold.
too? Because she was like, "Oh, we got to keep this whole funeral thing under wraps.
And you're gonna put your kid that's closest to death in the
It's like
freaking
the,
basement?
the kid's
I
like,
don't know.
Mom, what's up with this drain in my floor that has this weird, like, dark red fluid dried up? What's
like,
up with that?
why did I find a bottle that said embalming fluid?
Man,
No. So, needless to say, Philip had a problem with this. Uh, he's like, no, the basement freaks me out. Now, keep in mind, he doesn't know about the funeral home part of it. Um, but he's like, the basement freaks me out, Mom. I'm not doing it. And she's like, well, okay. Uh, well, that's where your room is going to be. So suck it up, Buttercup. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
yeah,
She,
yeah, a little spoiled brat. What,
this,
you have cancer? So what?
this is the 80s. Okay. So it's like, parenting was different back then.
Uh,
No, I'm not saying she was mean like that. What
uh,
it was is that she was compromising in this sort of fact. Look, Michael will be there with you. Um, and he's like, well, I'm not going to sleep in there alone. At the time, Michael, when they moved, the family didn't move all together. So Alan had to stay where I forget where they originally came from. It's another town in like Connecticut. But he
man,
originally had to stay there because of his job.
yeah, where was the
So
daughter at? Where was her bedroom at?
I guess the main level. It
I
never
can't
really,
believe it.
yeah. So, so the kids moved with the mom first, except Michael. Michael was actually visiting an aunt, down south, like in the southern part of the United States. So he wasn't there yet. And, so Philip was like, I'm not staying there alone. So he actually stayed in the living room on the couch, uh, this whole time before Michael came up. And so the first 2 weeks he was in the house, he was never in the basement. Uh,
Dude, wait, can we talk about this?
sure.
The mom had the option of putting the son upstairs. Like, she had the option to do it. This She willingly chose to put her cancerous son in the basement.
That's the one thing that doesn't make sense to me, but it happened. That's how it,
Why
that's how
why
the,
did she put the daughter down there, bro?
I don't know. Like, I really don't know. But,
Dude, the daughter would have so much fun because the embalming equipment comes with a makeup cabinet. It's perfect for little girls.
oh my God. I don't know if it came with that, but if you guys heard anything, it's because I bumped the mic.
That's a part of embalming. You do your dressing, makeup. Little girls love that.
Oh my God. Uh, I think it's a different type of makeup, but
Hey,
anyway, so Philip is in the house now, and the most of the kids are there, most of the family is there. There's a lot of stress simply because of the move, the fact that we still have Philip dealing with cancer, but for the most part, high hopes, right? So he's sleeping upstairs. Well, one day, this is within that first 2 week period, he's going into the kitchen from the living room, and he hears a voice, crisp, clear man's voice, and it says his name, and but it's questioningly stern, Philip. And he like turns around because he really thinks somebody's there, and no one's there. It's just him and his mom in the house at the time, and he knows that his mom is in like the shower because he can hear the shower going on uh, down the hall. And so he tries to like wipe it from his mind, thinking maybe he just heard something. Maybe his mom said something in the shower. I don't know. So then he hears it again. This time it's a little bit more agitated. It's like, Philip. So he turns back and he looks at where the direction it came from, and he sees the door to the basement open. It
mm,
wasn't open before, but it's open now. And so he's getting kind of creeped out, right? And so as he's walking towards the basement, he hears a voice coming from the basement that says, Philip, come down here. I don't know about you. If that was me, I'd be done. At 14, nope, I'm turning
Yeah, I
around
was gonna say,
and I'm
did
done.
what is up with Philip's decision making? Like, did they import Philip from a horror movie into real life?
Yeah,
Because,
this is
because,
exactly like you're sitting there in a
yeah,
horror movie and you're going, look, just don't open the door. Don't
because
open the door. And you know what you do? You open the door.
it's
You
like
know, it's like,
you're hanging out in the crib and your nice, comfy bedroom, aka a dingy basement. The door swings open and you hear a voice, and it's like, "All right, come in here." Obviously, the natural choice is to walk in and
no, thank you. Well, here's what's really funny. So the last part, when he comes, he enters the basement and goes about 4 steps down the basement. Suddenly he hears the same voice say, Philip, you gotta see this.
what?
Literally, just like that. That same, like, kind of
I
jokingly,
would say, what kind of jovial demon?
and very jovial. And for some reason, not the other creepy things that happened up to this point, that's the thing that spooks him.
What?
And so he starts to back up out of the basement, and the voice keeps going, but it gets quieter and quieter as he's backing up out of the basement. And then once he's in the basement, I mean, once he's in the living room, he just sits down, turns on the TV, and tries to pretend that never happened. So it freaked him out enough, though, because he decides, I'm going to go ahead and tell mom. And so he tells mom. Ready for the next thing that won't make sense?
Yeah, man.
So, first of all, if your kid is telling you that they're experiencing paranormal activity and it's all creepy and stuff, and they're legitimately scared like he is, I'm not saying that you need to absolutely believe them, but you need to at least entertain the fact that there's something going on that's scaring my kid.
Well, let's
Okay?
keep in mind also, he's not like a 7-year-old asking his dad to
No,
check under the bed. He's 14.
he's
Like,
14.
by time you're 14, you're not having, imagination so lucid you mistake it for reality. At least I wasn't at 14.
Right.
Sorry. Apparently,
And
I'm still 14. My voice just cracked like crazy. That's insane. But
well, the thing is so he tells his mom, right? Mom, this just happened. And she's like, okay, so look, she decides to tell him that it's a funeral home to try to calm him down. Why the why would you tell your son that? Like like
yeah,
that's like
dude,
saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, there was a murder in the house."
dude, that would totally calm me down. I'd be like, oh, thanks. I love
No.
that. It's,
No.
you know what? My thought was earlier. It's like, if you're already halfway down the stairs into the basement after something called you to go in the basement and it's telling you, oh, now you're in here, dude, you got to check this thing out. At that point, you're in it, man. Now you really got to check it out. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, because now I'm curious, what did the demon have to show him? Now
Oh,
I'm sure what a whole time he was watching the TV, he was curious. Like, damn,
yeah. I don't know. I
man.
mean, but at this point, I don't know if he believed in the paranormal. I think he was just, I mean, how do you describe that? How do you like think back to your first real paranormal experience? Like, and especially if it's something that verbal, that much of a disembodied voice. I mean, I don't know what I would do at his age. I
Yeah, I
do know
know.
this though, right? So, uh, him being 14 and dealing with cancer, that's a different mindset. You know what I mean? That's not a typical mindset that a teenager has to go through.
Right, because you're
So
you're only
there's a
14.
toughness there.
Right, because you're only 14 and you're literally going through like an existential, like, well, I
Yeah, like
might
you
die.
could be dead. You could
Right,
be
like,
dead.
I've
At the
lived my
same
life.
time, at the same time that all your fellow peers are just worrying about that first kiss. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Like you don't think you're gonna die at like 14, but he's clearly going through this experience. So, and that's the other thing too. So from Carmen's perspective, she's like, okay, maybe he's picking up on these weird vibes that this house just kind of has, and you know, chalked up with his cancer treatments. Maybe he's kind of hallucinating or something. And, you know, maybe this isn't paranormal. This is just something to do with his medications. Which, by the way, the medications that he's taking has nothing to do, it won't cause hallucinations and things like that.
You know what? I'm
Um,
tired of pretending. Get this woman her Mom of the Year award. We need it. She
yeah.
put her cancer-ridden son in the dingy basement. She
Hmm.
ignored him telling her he doesn't want to live there. She ignored him telling her about paranormal experiences. She is just going play by play, making all of the worst decisions possible.
So she did all this, right? She tells him this stuff, and then she goes, "Yeah, but don't tell the other kids because I don't want them to be freaked out about it."
Yep. Yeah.
But did you not just like why I mean, she must have been wanting to tell them like secretly, and that was her excuse to do it because if you're telling him don't tell the other kids because I don't want them to know, but at the same time you're telling him who is one of your kids, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Philip was
I don't
definitely
know.
the middle child. He's getting that middle child treatment right now.
Yeah, a little bit.
Mama's just torturing him.
So so soon after, and according to Philip, he never told the kids this at all. Soon after, the younger kids started experiencing things.
Mm.
Uh, Stephanie, uh, who that's where I get conflicting names, is because sometimes I hear it's Jennifer and sometimes I hear it's Stephanie. But for this purposes, we'll just go Stephanie. Okay. Stephanie was the youngest uh, daughter. She actually woke up one night and saw uh, a woman in white, freaky looking dead person just standing right next to her bed. Just full on apparition, saw it. And of course, she freaks out. There's a whole experience there. And Carmen is pissed because she's like, "You told your siblings this shit, and now they're seeing things. And, you know, why did
I
you do that?"
I
And he
would have
goes, "I didn't."
I would have loved to hear the mom's rational explanation for the daughter, because the mom has just been hitting dingers out of the park. Every time something happens, she is just out of every option just chooses the worst option. So I would have loved to hear her explanation for that from the daughter, telling her, she's like, "Oh, it's, puberty happens, you see dead people in your room."
Yeah, I mean, it's just normal stuff, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, yeah, you're
Good
gonna start,
night.
look, daughter, you're gonna start growing hair in places you haven't before. You're gonna start seeing dead bodies in your house, whatever.
It's normal. It's just a part of, you know, living in New England, I guess.
Yeah.
So, uh, anyway, so she tells him, you know, gets onto him for telling his siblings, and he's like, "Mom, I did not tell them anything at all." So naturally, the thing is, Philip is dead terrified of what's going on with him, not just with the cancer, but also with all the dead shit, right? And so he's terrified, and he's the one that actually starts telling the family of these things, and no one believes him. And at the same time, when it starts upsetting the other kids, they're like, they blame it on Philip. Philip at this point is like Kevin McAllister, okay? He can do no good. All right. He's the screw up or whatever. And so, on top of that, he also has to deal with the guilt of feeling like the only reason why we're here is because of me, right?
Dude,
We
somebody
wouldn't be in
save
this town
Philip.
if it wasn't because of me. I'm like, Philip, I feel so, oh man, like just your heart, like I said, this is a wild roller coaster because right now we're feeling this way. Okay. So all of a sudden, Michael comes home. All right. Michael is a little bit younger than Philip, and he is like a breath of fresh air. Cool as a cucumber type kid. He changes up the vibe because at this point, everybody is feeling this weird tension with the house. The mom is feeling it just because of not just because of the paranormal, but because of the stresses of being a parent of a bunch of kids in a new house and all the new house responsibilities. And Alan isn't there yet. Okay. So Michael comes in, and Philip and Michael then go downstairs, and now they're sleeping in this basement. So to picture what their room looks like, you have two twin beds. Okay, one's Michael's, one's Philip's, and this actually used to be, I guess, the casket display room or casket storage. And uh, you have the French doors, and then you have what used to be the embalming room on the other side of these French doors. So uh, it's funny because immediately, almost immediately, Philip is like, "Hey, bro, guess what?" And he actually tells him about the fact that they're in a funeral home.
Right.
Um, which I think he probably just did that out of spite because remember, he's just had his been accused of, it's like, all right, fine, you're gonna
Well,
accuse me of telling somebody, fine, I'll tell him.
well, I mean, cat's out of the bag at that point. If mom thinks that he's telling them, then
Hmm.
at that point, just tell them. Like, shit. Like,
So Michael, though, is like a little paranormal investigator. He takes it and he's not necessarily so scared of it, right? So he takes it as something that's kind of interesting. Philip at this point is somewhat the target, okay, of he's somewhat the target of all these experiences.
dude,
Okay.
somebody save this kid, man.
Yeah.
So, somebody save this kid for real.
Well, at one point, at this, so in the time frame of scheme, we're a few weeks in. Okay. Michael's now home, and Alan is on the way. Like not long after that, Alan gets his job finally moved over, and now he's moving into the house, and now the whole family is finally together. Okay. So, of course, Alan is brought up to speed by Carmen about, the whole weird vibes and weird experiences that Philip is undertaking, and Alan is like, this is absolute bull crap. Like, you know, first I have to do all this moving, then I have to do all this stuff, and then, he's the way he's described is almost damn near abusive in a way. I mean, he's like, this little twerp is now, making up stuff and scaring the other kids and causing all this stress and blah, 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 blah. Um, but that's just the vibe I get. Nowhere in any of my research does it say that he's an abusive parent.
Well, you
It's
know
just,
what? I see why the mom and the dad found each other. They have so much in common. I mean, they're complete idiots. I'm just gonna start there, right? I mean,
there's a lot of stress going on in this family beyond just the paranormal. Um, but one night, so this is while Alan is now in the house, Philip and Michael are downstairs, or no, excuse me, Michael isn't present during this. Philip is. So Philip is in his bed, and he he gets this overwhelming urge to look up. And this is in darkness, moonlight shining through the windows, that type of thing. And so a basement really isn't that bright.
they get the moonlight shining in from the high ceiling shutter
Yeah.
vent
Yeah.
windows.
And so he looks over, like he gets this overwhelming urge to look up. And so he looks up and he sees in the French doors, and I kid you not, this would freak me out if I was his age. He sees on the other side of the French doors a a man,
Oh
okay,
my god.
completely gaunt with dark eyes simply because of the way the light is hitting his face. So it's kind of silhouetting his eyes. So you can't see the eyes. And he is just standing there right up against, like, close to the window. So you can't see anything past him. He just kind of looks like he formed right there on the other side of the window. And his lips are moving like he's talking. Philip can't hear anything that he's saying. And he's just frozen in fear. Okay. The room gets cold, and then he sees this man's hand start to reach through the, through the window to
Mm,
the door handle. And as soon as the door handle physically turns, like he sees it turn, that's when suddenly he's no longer frozen and he like bounds up the stairs at like 4 stairs at a time. Okay. And you can kind of imagine this. Everybody's had that moment, right? He comes bursting through the door onto the main landing and falls to his knees in front of God and everybody. And so he tells the story really quickly. And his father is like, all right, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to take care of this guy. You know, um, there's somebody in my house. And so he goes all protective dad mode. He goes down there. There ain't nobody there. So he comes back up the stairs. And I mean, he is pissed at Philip. Because he's like, how dare you cause all this ruckus, da 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 da. You need to act your age. Stop talking about all this ghost crap. You know, the boogeyman in the closet, blah, 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 blah. Knock it off. You know, you're scaring everybody else.
Dude called me out, man. Damn. Listen,
And so naturally, this alienates Philip because he's experiencing all this stuff. Okay. He's experiencing all this stuff, and nobody in his family believes him, other than maybe his brother, right? And the kids. But nobody that actually should care cares. All right. Now, secretly, Carmen has been having experiences as well, like vibes and like seeing things out of the corner of her eye and all this stuff. And she just keeps repressing it and repressing it and doesn't tell Philip any of this at all. Right. So, speaking of, here's one of her experiences. She was mopping in the kitchen. Okay. Most of the kids were out doing things, whatever. She's just kind of, listening to the radio or whatever, mopping. And this is broad daylight. And she's not paying attention really to the mop. She's just kind of like staring off into space and she's just, dousing the mop in the bucket and rinsing it off. And then suddenly she can hear, like, not hear, she can smell this like metallic smell. And she looks down and she realizes it's coming from the mop bucket. And the mop bucket, the water has turned like this rusty red color, enough that it was actually starting to stain the mop.
ooh,
And the only way that it can best be described is it was like blood. And guess what? She never did. Never told anybody about it. This is the same time that Philip's getting all this bullshit, and getting, you know, basically uh, called a, what do they call it? The boy who cried wolf. Basically, he's getting that treatment, right? But meanwhile, she's experiencing stuff like that.
well, her probably yelling at him and telling him it's not real is really her reflecting her own thoughts to herself. Like,
Yeah,
you're
she's trying to
tripping.
reassure herself that this isn't real. This is not real. This isn't happening.
Right.
Uh, and okay, from her perspective, if that's the case, you have to understand too, there's not a lot of options here. This is the only place that they could find. Philip is still in a dire situation. If he doesn't get his treatments, he's going to die. And so, even if this is an actual haunted house, full on, like, you know what? This is what we have to live with.
Hell,
Like,
I'll
there's
t-
no other place to go. What are you going to do?
man, I'll tell you a couple options. My first thought wouldn't be we have to move out. We're already tied up. My first thought would be I'm gonna start listening to what my kids are saying, and we can show a united front,
Oh, yeah.
protect each other. Not, man, what an annoyance my cancer-ridden son is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, now we have Michael. So Michael ends up having some experiences too, and he's in the basement. Uh, he wakes up and he sees what looks like a cat-eyed entity on like the ceiling above him, just looking down at him. It is a human type entity, but it has cat eyes. And he sees this in darkness. No, 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 no.
I,
Like,
well, I don't know how this freaks you out more than the story of the dude outside the French doors, because that one, woo, man, if I seen that, I don't even know what I would do.
I watched some video somewhere, and I can't remember if it was the documentary version of A Haunting in Connecticut or if it was the film, but they replicated that, and it looks freaky. Like it's creepy. Um, but I don't know. I think I'd be more scared of something directly above me than like I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say that with the man, I have a point of exit.
Yeah,
If
but
I'm
think
laying in
about
my
like
bed and this thing's above me, like,
I think the power of suggestion would mess me up with the man because it's like he's trying to come in like he's plotting something.
hmm
Ugh, I don't like it.
yeah. And so all this is happening, and Michael, of course, freaks the hell out and tells his brother, tells the others, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. We don't believe you. Da 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 da. You know, the dad has like this attitude of stop talking about it. It's not real. It'll go away. You guys are freaking each other out. You know, stop telling ghost stories in the basement. Enough. And I mean, they would just see like shadow figures and stuff in the basement, and they would see like flashes of like little lights, kind of like I guess you'd call them orbs.
Yeah.
And this is at a time when there really isn't a lot of information on the paranormal, so it's not like these kids are out there researching it. And what was really interesting though was the music. So the dad, Mr. I don't believe anything at all and stop talking about it, was upstairs one day and he ended up hearing what sounded like 30s like music, like parlor music, like
Yeah.
you know. And so he's like, okay, the kids are downstairs, they're listening to some music, but what 14-year-old listens to 1930s,
You listen to that
you know?
swanky speakeasy music.
Yeah. And so he goes downstairs and he's hearing the music and it's loud and then suddenly it stops. And he comes around the corner and there's nothing there. The boys aren't even there. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen. Cut to the boys. They have similar experiences. Now, the family isn't talking at this point. So Alan's not telling the kids, and the kids have just stopped telling Alan anything because you're just going to get hit with the same, stop talking about it, it's not real. So they're actually experiencing the same thing too, where they wake up and they're hearing full on like a crowd of people on the other side of the French doors talking, whispering, saying things, you know. Um, then it starts growing a little bit darker. So Philip, who was a just goofy, happy-go-lucky kid, a sick kid, but other than that, I mean, he's still himself. Um, he started to kind of retract from the family, and what's interesting is he started to enjoy being in the basement. Uh, he was the one that was really connecting with these spirits, and 9 times out of 10, remember, he's the one that's being called to, and he started calling them his friends. And like, this isn't a kid with an imaginary friend. This is a 14-year-old. Okay. Uh, luckily, the cancer treatments were working. At one point, he ends up going into remission. So, uh, so things are somewhat improving in the family, but he keeps kind of isolating himself. And in some ways, I can kind of understand because nobody's believing him other than the kids,
I was gonna
right?
say, hell, man, if that was my family, I'd rather hang out with the demons in the basement too.
Yes. So, but his personality starts to change. He kind of becomes more macabre type, and so he's downstairs in the basement one day, and they end up coming across a gurney. Um, which was in the back corner. It was one of the things that they couldn't get rid of, that they just kind of kept and stored. So he puts Michael on this gurney, right, as a game. And he starts spinning Michael around on this gurney, right? And you'd think that's, kind of fun, whatever. But eventually, Michael's like, okay, I'm starting to get a little sick here. I'm getting dizzy. Can we stop? And he looks up at Philip and he's not seeing Philip. Philip has like this look of, you know, um, just evil. Like he looks evil. It's not his brother looking back at him, you know. So that starts putting a little bit of a damper between Michael and Philip's relationship, just saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fair.
And Michael was kind of Philip's greatest ally here. Um, and about that same time, Carmen gets a phone call from her sister. And it's like, hey, I believe it's actually the same aunt that Michael was hanging out with when they first moved. I'm not sure. I couldn't find any direct sources on that, but it seems like it was. So she calls Carmen up and says, hey, sis, uh, I'm kind of in a situation here. So me and my husband, we're not cutting it anymore. We're gonna have a divorce, and it's gonna be pretty nasty. Do you mind taking my daughters while we go through this divorce? Her daughters are um, 17 and 12, with Kelly being 17 and Mary being 12. Will you take our daughters for a period of time while we deal with this divorce thing, and then, you know, we'll we'll all get back together and everything will be fine. As far as I'll take the kids. But they didn't want them to go through the whole custody battle, and I can understand, you know, I can understand that. So Carmen is like, we're already so stressed with the amount of kids that we have in this house. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So so she lets them come over, and they are almost in the family immediately. Like they're just one with the family at this point.
Well, that's
So
a really weird thing because this is clearly not the most welcoming family on the planet.
yeah, you know, I mean,
Shit.
but what family is though? Unfortunately,
Not this one.
at
God,
this point, at this point, Alan is he's kind of suppressing his own issues because he keeps experiencing stuff too, but he's like very adamant, like this is ridiculous. So he actually starts turning to drinking to like cope.
wow.
So now we have an alcoholic. Um, and again, I don't know this family. I am making assumptions. So I do want our listeners to know this. I do not know any of these people. I'm just kind of calling it as I see it here. And I mean, Alan might have been the greatest guy in the world, and he just happened to be an alcoholic. So I know plenty of people, even in my own family, who are alcoholics, who are the nicest people in the world. But I'm just saying, okay? Uh, so now the girls come, and for the most part, there's stuff kind of happening, but it really isn't that crazy. It's the typical haunting type stuff, bangings, knocks, seeing things out of the corner of your eye. No one's getting the full effects like Philip is. Philip is the kid that's just sitting down there in the basement, just taking it all in. Okay.
Let's have a great time.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, Philip goes upstairs, and the friends of his are saying, hey, you know, mess with your cousin, Kelly. So while she's asleep, Kelly and Mary are in the same room. Okay. While she's asleep, and this is a trigger warning. Okay. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the episode, there was a disclaimer. So, uh, he is groping her. So, um, she doesn't respond. She doesn't wake. And so the voices then tell him to do that to Mary. So he begins to grope Mary, and she doesn't wake up. And so on another occasion, he comes back up and he's doing it with Mary, um, groping her, I mean. Kelly walks in on it. She either walks in on it or she sees it, and she puts a stop to that immediately. Like, immediately, you know.
Also, can we
Uh,
drop another reminder that these are his cousins as well?
these are his cousins. Yes. This is the same happy go lucky kid that was just,
Yeah,
nobody would believe and everything else. And now all of a sudden he's this. So see how I mean like the roller coaster here?
right.
Like he went from you're rooting for Philip and now you're like, what the whoa,
And listen, you guys, once we get to the debunking bit of the podcast, the whole groping claims are going to age like actual milk. It's
Yeah.
going to
Well,
look really bad on every
yeah.
party involved, pretty much.
So anyway, his mom, and I have to say, uh, Carmen did a good job with this. She, your natural instinct is to protect your child, right? But how do you protect your child when your child is actually the offender?
Right.
You know? So she ended up taking the side of the girls and was like, Philip, you need help. And of course he went, I mean, he went from 0 to like 100 on anger. Like this whole time his mood was like F you and I don't care and all this stuff and da 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 da. He had just beat cancer. You'd think he would have like this new found thing on life. But I mean, his mood, his whole personality was 100% different than the way it was when he got there. And uh, he ends up confessing to trying to have sex with Mary. Um,
Now, mind you, okay, it's a very slippery slope when you blame actual crimes on a haunting. And if you don't
mhm,
believe that, just look at the case of Arnie Johnson Cheyenne, where he killed somebody while supposedly possessed. So look,
mhm.
essay is essay. All right, there
Yep.
might be some ghosts, might whatever. That's what
Yeah,
happened.
sexual assault is sexual assault. And so Carmen's like, "What the? Whoa. You can't be in this house. You can't be in this house. I can't trust you. You cannot be in this house." She calls the police. The police come. Of course, now there's a crime. Um, so they do the whole investigation there. Uh, and so they end up taking him into custody. He's a juvenile, so they run it through the juvenile system. He gets put into a juvenile detention center, and it's during that time that they meet with him, some psychiatrists and stuff, and they determine that he has schizophrenia based off of because he tells them the whole story. He's like, I see ghosts and the voices told me to do it, and all these different things. And so they're like, all right, well, yeah, schizophrenia. Check. And so the doctors tell the mom, hey, he's going to need to go into a psychiatric facility for a period of time. Um, it's going to take weeks before he can get in it. We're just going to keep him in custody because we can't release him to the house, you know,
Right.
with all these girls. And so that's how they handle it. And so they're like, okay. She's like, cool. So at this point now, Philip is gone. As soon as he leaves, everything goes nuts. Because now, guess what? Philip has been taking this. Now, I'm saying if we believe any of this, okay? Philip has been taking all of this spiritual energy and taking it all onto himself, okay? All the dark crap. Holy crap. There wasn't a single member of that family that did not have experiences after that. Um, there were multiple times where Alan would wake up and the bed would be vibrating, like physically vibrating, but yet Carmen wouldn't wake up. Uh, and then there was periods of time when she would, and so now that's confirmation to him that they're both experiencing this stuff. There's actually one event where And I would say base this loosely because I remember this was actually in the movie, and the movie's very fictionalized. But
Yeah, the
uh,
movie doesn't really carry any of the baggage from
no,
the story.
no,
Like, there's not going to be any essay in the movie or.
yeah, but there's a part where Carmen is in the shower, and she talks about how she actually says in later interviews that the movie was very tame compared to what happened. So she's in the shower, and you know how like you have the curtains in a shower, and sometimes how they'll kind of blow in towards you a little bit, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Um, well, in this case, it actually wrapped around her and like tried to smother her while she was in the shower, like full on wrapped around her. Um,
Damn.
and this was at the same time of feeling vibes. And so just there wasn't a single person in that family that didn't have an experience. And then we get to Alan. So another trigger warning. So Alan's in bed, and so is Carmen, and he ends up waking up, and he is frozen, like paralyzed, like sleep paralysis. Okay, and I'm gonna try to kind of quote this from him. It's not a direct quote; it's paraphrasing, but he says, "I felt a strange sensation that moved from my feet towards my head. I just couldn't move. I felt a strange tingling sensation going up his leg. I felt a strange tingling sensation in my anus. I was
Nice.
unable to scream, unable, and then eventually I was able to move, and I immediately called out to Carmen and exclaimed, I was just sodomized by this demon."
Yeah. I mean, that
I'm
is,
just saying, from Philip's Pointer's perspective, now do you believe, Dad?
yeah. I mean, getting your chocolate starfish tickled by a demon definitely might convert you into a,
Did you just say a chocolate
that's
starfish?
what it was, man. He got converted from a skeptic to a believer real quick.
Real quick, like real
Yeah.
quick. And so at that point, it's like, my God, we need help. Our family's going through all this hell. And naturally, too, um, I do believe that this happened. If the haunting actually happened as it was, I do understand from this perspective because my own personal haunting that got me into this paranormal world, uh, naturally, the family members start from staying in one room, they end up all kind of getting into one room and they kind of stay in there. If that makes sense. It's kind of where they sleep. They do everything, right? They because they're all experiencing all this stuff, and there's kind of like you feel strength in numbers. Um, and when my situation, me and Dad, we ended up sleeping in the same room. Like he would take the bed, and I would take the recliner,
Well,
and
this
like
is what
literally.
that was my curiosity. I'm like, why is this family so divided all the time?
So they were, and then Philip left, and now the brunt of everything hit them. Uh, they were able to kind of ride it off, and turns out Carmen and Alan were experiencing multiple different things at multiple times, but they kept it secret from each other, and they kept just trying to ride it off. And like the shaking bed situation, Alan experienced that many times, but he wouldn't tell anybody. And Carmen experienced it with him, and so that's how she knew about it. Um, but eventually it got to a point where you cannot ignore this anymore, right? And with Alan, you can't drink your problems away. That's just not going to happen. Okay. And so they end up calling, um, well, I don't know. Perhaps you've never heard of them because, I mean, I don't know. They sound, just sounds like something I've never heard before. Somebody called the Warrens, you know?
Yeah, some nobody paranormal. No. Yeah, they called the Warrens
Ed
and
and Lorraine Warren uh, did not live that far from them, so it wasn't a big deal for them to um,
No, no.
Come and do this investigation, essentially. And when I say come and do this investigation, I mean live with them for 9 weeks.
Yep.
Ed and Lorraine lived with this family for 9 weeks.
And I honestly think the funniest part about it all is that the movie still managed to make a movie about the haunting without Ed and Lorraine getting any screen time, even though they were in the family pretty much for 9 weeks.
Hmm.
Oh, that's 2 months. That's a long time.
So, anyway, so they lived with them for that period of time. And uh, this is from an online article. It's from the online source. It's called Collider. And this is from their article titled The Alleged True Story of a Haunting in Connecticut. So, this is to quote them. Carmen contacted the Warrens and asked them to come investigate the house. And according to her, the rosary beads that she was holding onto during their phone conversation exploded. The Warrens arrived the next day with the priest, who they say conducted a blessing on the house, though they claimed at that time it had no effect. The Warrens then researched the home and allegedly found that when the house was used as a funeral home, one of the employees was charged and convicted of necrophilia and performing satanic rituals. After conducting their initial investigation, the Warrens sought out an exorcism. The, of course, in the Catholic Church, the only way you can get an exorcism is you have to basically prove through
Right.
investigation that that there's something going on, and then there's like an application process, and then the Catholic Church will grant the authority to have
Right.
an
You guys
actual
would be
exorcism.
surprised that we don't live in the 1700s anymore. It is actually quite the process to get a
Yeah,
Vatican certified exorcism. It is
yeah,
yeah,
and
it's a process.
they don't do it easily. Like
No.
you really have to prove that something's going on. So the bishop is said to have assigned two priests who conducted another blessing and said a mass in the home. Now, the reason why it says it's said is because the Catholic Church denies that they sanctioned this. Now, Catholic Church will also say that no kids were ever touched by priests, but
I think we all know what goes down
yeah.
in Sunday school.
No offense to Catholics, okay? I'm not saying there's any offense to Catholics. I'm not. It's just like with police officers. Just because you have one bad cop doesn't mean every cop is bad. But
It's not
what I'm
it's
saying
yeah,
is that I don't
yeah,
know if I would trust the Catholic Church to, especially with the controversy that came out about about this particular case.
yeah,
I could understand why the church is like,
yeah.
nope, I'm gonna
And
wash my hands of this. I was not involved.
and speaking of controversy, we are pretty much there. We are pretty much at the point in which this case gets scrutinized
Yes. So
because it goes public from the Warrens.
it immediately goes public, and the uh, excuse me, my stomach did weird stuff, and so I don't know if that got caught on camera. So we're gonna pause again.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, good. So I'll fix that in post. We can fix it in post. So naturally, there was actually an article posted at the same time. So almost immediately, when it came to um, the fact that there was going to be an exorcism, it was actually published in the local newspaper. September 15th of 1988 was when they basically broadcast it to the world, or at least that's when it premiered in the newspaper, their local town. I'm trying to find the name of it. You, it, it's funny how I would remember the name, remember the date, but I can't remember the name of
Some
the
people are
newspaper.
some people are better with numbers than they are with words.
Yeah, I'm weird that way. I'm big on dates.
We balance each other out. I'm terrible with dates.
Anyway, it was a local newspaper, and I promise you, you will see a picture of it in our additional media, and I will have a, I'll give credit to it. But back to the story. So they published this and immediately spread like wildfire, especially because it was the Warrens. And so the Warrens later actually wrote a book called A Dark Place. It was co-authored by the Warrens and another author. That's the book I really wish I would have read prior to this. But unfortunately, I had only just learned about it like through research for this investigation, and there just wasn't enough time. But that's where they talk about their actual investigation with the house and what their theories are on it. And so this exorcism happened and it was cured. Poof.
According to
The
the Warrens.
According to the Warrens, the exorcism was a success and it was very, 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 very like Lorraine Warren really harped on this. The house is cleansed, it is blessed. The entities are gone. Do not perform rituals or try to do any sort of paranormal investigating here because there's a very good chance it'll come back. So she was very, very, very adamant about this. And this whole experience did not come without some some losses, according to uh, Lorraine Warren. So during the exorcism, Ed Warren claimed to suffer from heart issues that were resolved once the ritual was completed. So she basically said, "This is so bad. My husband was having a heart attack actively while we were doing this exorcism. It was attacking my husband."
Well, he actually, what's interesting though is that Ed did suffer from heart issues actually for the rest of his life after that.
Yep. So, um, now Lorraine Warren was actually interviewed after the movie came out in 2009, Haunting in Connecticut, and this is what she said about it, quoting the Collider online article, said of the film, Lorraine Warren commented that it was greatly, greatly exaggerated, telling NBC Connecticut, quote, "The movie is very, very loosely based on the actual investigation," unquote. Remarking on her distaste for the film, she added, quote, "It's embarrassing. Do you know the amount of time and effort that we put into that case? Do you know how many meetings with the clergy we had to finally bring closure to the family?" Unquote. The Snedekers moved out of the house after more than 2 years as residents, so not long after this exorcism. And Philip ended up having to live with other relatives. As soon as he got out of the psychiatric home and he was living with the other relatives, he immediately changed. He was back to happy go lucky and had no more. Like, this is where I kind of don't agree with the diagnosis of schizophrenia, because if you got schizophrenia, it isn't ever going to leave you.
Right.
He
Unless you get
stopped
on.
hearing voices, he went on and had a normal life.
Right.
So, uh, now back to the house though. Uh, paranormal and the activity, Paranormal activity in the house has literally ceased to exist. It does not happen. In the years that followed, no other residents are said to have reported any activity, and the house today still exists as a duplex, and it just sits quietly. It's another beautiful house in New England.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it sounds like the story closes on a pretty good note. Everyone walked away, but where did the cracks in the story start to show? Where did they start showing? Well, I'll tell you where they
so
started showing.
yeah.
Pretty much in the very beginning. Do you guys remember about that nice slow build up, almost like a movie director would have written, where they move in and they're like, "Man, this is weird. What's up with this equipment down here and this crank? Whoa, is this a funeral home?" Uh, you may be led to believe that they weren't told it was a funeral home, but it was actually advertised as a historic funeral home on the sign where it said it was being sold. The first thing you see is that it's a historic funeral home. It was not that she signed off and then later discovered. She knew from the start.
Yep.
So
And what's crazy is that when she was actually visiting the house, the funeral home's sign, it was called the Holohan Funeral Home. was still in the front yard.
Yeah. And you also may note how earlier Ryder mentioned that it was a duplex and Carmen signed off on the rights to the first floor and the basement. So you
Mhm.
might be thinking, what is the upstairs neighbors doing all of these 2 years? Well, I'll tell you what they were doing, living a perfectly normal life.
Yep.
They had no paranormal activity happen at all. They
And
did not testify.
other neighbors were quoted as saying that the family outside of the house seemed just as normal as any other family.
Yeah.
They never had any experiences with anything. Of course, they would sometimes hear shouting, but they couldn't tell what was being said. Normal people have arguments sometimes. So, um, but other than that, there was no like anything to point to any danger. However, one neighbor did say that he knew that they were in a financial situation and that um, rent was starting to get behind on.
Mm,
And so there's some beliefs that, we were basically about to do an Amityville um, money grab type situation. You know,
yeah. Yeah. And
I'm, I'm speculating here, but
well, the point is, really, the real takeaway is if you live in a super devil house and it's so bad to a point where you're literally being sodomized by demons on the reg, then how is it that somebody located less than 10 feet above you has nothing going on at all? Not even a trickle of activity. How is that possible?
yep.
Does the demon just not care about the upstairs neighbors?
Yep. And the fact that nothing has happened in the house since. Now, granted, okay, if you believe any of this at all, they did an exorcism and the demons are gone.
But there's another crack. Was there an exorcism?
Hmm.
Because if the
The church
clergy
denies it.
the clergy claims not to have done an exorcism on the home.
Yep.
And Lorraine claimed that they had an exorcism done on the home. But also, Ed and Lorraine are the same people who claim to have exorcised the Perrin family in the Conjuring house. Whereas what actually happened is they showed up for one day and then got kicked out.
Yep.
Nothing like the movie. So look, out of every case in the Warrens catalog, the Snedeker house is really, I mean, man, it's if they were lying, if the whole thing was made up, which I'm sure maybe something strange maybe happened, but if the whole thing was made up, that's a really messed up story to make up. But talking about
The sexual
groping,
assaults
yeah,
and that's
SA,
that's the other problem, right? Is that in a way, if this is all true, like entirely, I'm not saying that there isn't maybe a grain of truth here, right? But if this is all true, in a way, they're basically getting the Philip treatment.
right,
No
pretty
one's really
much.
believing, and the family, I mean, they disappeared after this. That's why it's so hard to find anything on it, because it just keeps coming up, the haunting in Connecticut. Whenever you try to look it up on, you really have to dig.
Yeah,
And on,
it's
yeah,
it's really, really, really hard to even decipher whether or not the Snedeker family is actually a family that ever existed. And while as crazy as it may be, I've heard people theorize that the Snedekers don't actually exist. A lot of people believe that it was just an alias.
well, we do have we do have a record of Philip, so he did exist, and according to Find a Grave, so yeah, I said Find a Grave. Uh, Philip uh, Philip Snedeker was born on the 29th of August 1973 in Marietta, Georgia, and he died on January 9th, 2012 at the age of 38. He died because his cancer unfortunately came back, and this time he didn't win. So, Mr. Philip Snedeker. See, I told you, Snedeker.
Snedeker.
Snedeker? Snedeker. Sorry.
Snedeker.
Mr. Philip Snedeker, 38, a resident of Johnson City, Tennessee, passed away at his home on Monday, January 9th, 2012. He was born in Marietta, Georgia. He worked as a truck driver at the time of his passing. He was of the Catholic faith. He loved music and hunting. Mr. Snedeker is survived by his parents, a sister, two brothers, and his four sons, his maternal grandmother and her husband, his paternal grandfather, a sister, two brothers, and two stepbrothers. Several nieces, nephews, and cousins also survive. The funeral service for Mr. Snedeker was conducted on Wednesday, January 11th, 2012 at 2 p.m. in the Tetrick Funeral Home Chapel of Peace, Elizabethton, with Father Dennis Kress officiating. Interment followed the funeral service in the Wilson Cemetery. So that's in
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. But with this whole story, you have a really hard time sympathizing with literally anybody because you can feel
Yeah.
bad for him having cancer, but he also molested his cousin
Yep.
uh multiple times, which I mean, you can say you're getting trolled by demons as much as you want. I don't care, man. You touched your cousin, man. Yeah, you see a monster in your closet. Okay. Look,
Yep.
and also, and here's the thing. The only reason I'm led to believe that anybody in this story is lying is because there's so many inconsistencies. We only listed off the big ones, being the fact that they knew it was a funeral home from the start. They had someone living right above them the whole time and had nothing happen. And, just other stuff like that. But there's even more inconsistencies. Like, for example, when the mother, Carmen, was on her press run talking about the activity, she got pressed by the media and people were like, well, if you knew that your children and other people were being tortured pretty much by these demons and getting touched by these demons inappropriately, why wouldn't you just move them out, right?
Yep.
And she said, oh, well, I didn't know any of this is happening. And mind you, she's the same person who claimed to also have been tickled by a demon.
Yep.
So how do you
And
not know that it's happening to your kids when you also claim it's happening to you?
yep. Exactly.
And it's like at what point does it, like, if we believe this story just simply based off of their testimonials, just the words that come out of their mouth, then isn't it equally as damning if other things that come out of their mouth is contradictory, since that's the only basis of evidence we have here?
Yep.
It's pretty bad. Um,
Yep. So I would say to conclude this, I am at 40% belief. I, I
40%.
I'm 40%. Only because I believe that something may have occurred. I do believe that there might have been some paranormal activity. Um, and I can chalk that off to being that I have been around investigations before where people were legitimately experiencing things and others weren't. You know what I mean? That were nearby, or who were next door. Hell, even some relatives that lived in the same house. So the fact that the neighbors are just like nothing happened at all, I'm kind of, I mean, that could very well be true if the family is just making this up entirely. Or it could just simply be they're not experiencing it, but the family is. For whatever reason, maybe they're just more open to it. Um, but I would probably say yes. I believe it maybe 40%. I feel like there might be a little bit of grain of truth here, you know, but I need more.
I
There
would
needs to be
say
more. Like I need to have more info, and there's not enough right now. Like it's all speculative because we don't have access to anything that the Warrens did, right? And if we do, it's not published. Um, it's not easy to find. The only thing you find on the Warrens is that they were there. That's it. Like I haven't found anything else that came out and like, oh, this is what they captured. These are the photographs. These are the, you know what I mean?
right.
Um, there's just so much missing here that I Now that think about it, I'm probably saying maybe 30%.
Man,
See, I just convinced myself that we lost 10%. I
I'm
believe that
maybe
something may have happened, but
I'm maybe 15% a believer because if the only words we're going off of, the only basis that we have that these things occurred is just the family's testimonies, if all you have are testimonies and that doesn't even match up, your evidence is null.
yeah.
And you're right to the because I'm an investigator. I've seen instances where somebody will experience a haunting, whereas not necessarily everybody in the even in the same house is witnessing those things. I mean, true, but you have to think about the reasoning. The
Yeah.
house, all of it should be haunted because it was all a funeral home, right? It would all
Hmm.
be haunted for the same reason,
Yeah.
you know, um, unless the demons were under lease for only hanging out in the basement and the first floor too.
Yeah. Well, and see, here's the other thing too. This is why I wish we had more from the family. Okay. We have all the controversy, but I was never able to find any actual tangible directly from the family. Now, granted, maybe if I read this book, A Dark Place, maybe there would have been a lot more from them specifically. But um, it's not uncommon for people's stories to change a little bit. Like if you interview me 10 years from now about a situation that we were both involved in, right? You'll get two different answers from me and you because memory isn't like playing back a recorded tape. There's certain things that our perspectives could change over time, and so our memory isn't exact. But a lot of this stuff came out right around the time that it actually happened, which means the stories are still fresh, you know?
Right.
So, um, that's why I'm like, okay, on one hand, yes, it could be that they're just lying, and on the other hand, it could just be they're not able to recall properly, and so she messes up her story, you know, and you got to understand too, skeptics, like hardcore skeptics um, that they'll grasp to that. I know we were talking
Yeah.
off mic about, you might have eight people that are saying they're all experiencing the same thing. You get one person that says that they're not. And some people who are very, very, very skeptical will just align with that one person and be like, well, see, it didn't happen. So
Right.
that's why I'm 30%. There's a lot more stuff here too that's kind of fishy that just to me just doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand these things to the extent of maybe forgetting a detail here and there, but with this case in particular, everything is wrong. Like everything. Like even the people that publicized the story, Ed and
Mhm.
Lorraine,
Yeah.
criticized the Haunting in Connecticut movie for dramatizing the whole story, but
Yep.
then turned around and praised The Conjuring for
Hmm.
dramatizing the story. So
Yep.
there's inconsistencies even with the messenger of the story, right?
Exactly.
And then the perpetrators of the story can't get their story straight with each other.
Yep.
And it's
So.
like literally everywhere you turn, any, tiddly-wink of evidence you might see there just gets ruined by somebody somewhere, in the house. And it's just like, man, like I don't it's just like everything is wrong.
So to conclude, right? It's an interesting case, nonetheless, right?
Yeah, this is a really good case to look at, especially if you want to practice your media literacy skills. And, that's a really important skill to exercise, especially in the paranormal space, because there's so much information that gets thrown around. You need to be able to use, you got to use your right side of your brain, right? You got
Yep.
to decipher. And this is a really good case of that because there are multiple sides to this story, and a lot of different layers going on, which I think is what makes it so interesting to me.
Yeah. Now, if given an opportunity, would you investigate it?
Mm, Of course. Yeah. Why not? I mean, even if you remove the Schnedekers entirely from the story itself, it's still an ex-funeral home, you know?
Hmm.
And, in that basement, there's still, equipment in there. So it's like, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, in my hometown, there's a funeral home turned antique store,
Hmm.
and when I was a teenager, we when I was a young lad, we actually investigated the location, and it was pretty active. It was pretty cool. So,
Yes.
but the lady who ran it, she was like, you know, yeah, there's some spooky stuff, but I got to thinking, you know what, antique store, like it might have been active not because of the location, but because of what was being brought in.
Right. Yeah. You get all that stuff from different backgrounds getting thrown all together like that.
Yep. But um, yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like I said, I conclude that maybe about 30% of it might be true. Um, so I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Uh, like I said, I feel for Philip in the beginning, not so much during the sexual assault part, and you know,
Yeah.
so anyway, well, that's about a wrap here. We're going to go ahead and close the gates on the Crypt Yard, and thank you so much for sticking with us during this whole interesting debacle. Like I said, it was going to be a wild ride. It's not like our normal cases that we do where it's just nice and smooth and easy. So
Yeah.
I feel
This
like
one
we
was a
had
little bit more,
banter.
well, and not even banter. It was just like dark and it's hard. It's really hard not to look at it from a lens of critique.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a good thing. It makes
Yep.
for an interesting story to tell. And look, you guys, you gotta check out this Instagram, all right? I'll be like that demon from the basement in the beginning. I got something to show you. Come on, I got something to show you. I got something to show you on this Instagram page.
You got to see it.
Yeah, go
Uh,
into the metaphorical Crypt Walker's Instagram basement.
yep. Come follow us. And
Yeah,
so check us out. Also, be sure to check out Williams and all his adventures at WTCW Paranormal. You can find them basically at WTCW Paranormal anywhere.
pretty
So,
much. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, no, like I said, you guys got to check that out because stuff is about to hit. Stuff is about to hit the press that
Oh
you're gonna
yeah.
wanna see. So, also, we want feedback, guys. Like we're in the beginning stages here of the podcast where we're still trying to find our voice, try to find our uh, basically how we're gonna run our show, and this is where you guys can really communicate to us certain things you want to see or things that you don't want to see. Like maybe you want the episodes to be shorter. Tell us. Just we want this back and forth. We want to be connected with our audience. Also, if you have any case suggestions, stuff you want us to go over, and if you have your own stories, send it to us. Like, trust me, it'll be on the listener files if you send it to us. Like, it's one of those things where we might take a little bit of liberty, a little bit, but if I do, I'll make sure to send it back to you so that way you know what has been changed, what hasn't been changed, and you'll have the opportunity to approve of it before I actually put it on the show. Um, anyway, I guess unless there's anything else you want to add, William.
Yeah, I got one more thing. I'm about to
Okay.
make Crypt Walker's history. Listen, I didn't forget about the beginning of this story. I'm officially calling out Carmine Snedeker and the father of the Snedeker family to a boxing match. I swear to God, they were making me so mad at the beginning of the story. Just misses every chance they had. Literally, boxing match now. Call me tomorrow. I will find you.
Oh, the hornet's nest we probably just kicked. Um, well, anyway, guys, stick around because there's going to be a trailer for our next case file episode. So, see you guys next time.
Next time on Crypt Walkers.
It was just a routine flight from New York to Miami. On board the most advanced aircraft of its time. Then, shortly before midnight, on December 29th, 1972, in the darkness above the Florida Everglades, it all went wrong. Join us as we explore the paranormal aftershocks created by the ghosts of Flight 401. The crash was only the beginning. Episode airs Wednesday, April 30th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you ready to walk amongst the crypts with us? Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an episode. Don't forget to leave a review and share your own paranormal stories with us. We might feature them in an upcoming episode of Crypt Walkers, The Listener Files. Check us out on social media by clicking the link tree in the show notes. If you want to send in your own case or spooky story, email us at contact@cryptwalkers.net. Also, be sure to check out William's adventures with WTCW Paranormal by clicking his link tree in the show notes.
This podcast is a Miko Line Media production. The names Crypt Walkers, a paranormal podcast, and WTCW Paranormal is owned by its individual owners, all rights reserved. Music by Quentin Colbitz and Max H. Music and sound design created by Miko Line Media and licensed through Artlist. Copyright 2024.